Some people are very successful in their resentment that can't last. Eventually, it's just going to blow up your heart and you're going to die young.
If you take care of the basics, you can execute your stuff way longer. Do not discount the value of basic things.
Luck is a relationship between the work that you put in ahead of time and this like serendipitous thing occurring.
If you as a creator think everything I do has to be original, yes, your thing is very likely to be different. It's also going to suck balls.
Saying yes to something, even if 90% of you wants to say no to this opportunity, is something that you should do. If you say no to every single one of those, then you're just closing a door every single time. Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. It is TCU's Day, and I am Kevin Lieber. With me, as always, is Matthew Tabor, but not with us is our guest, Alternate History Hub. Because of a little bit of a emergency that popped up today, life happens, and life happened to Cody today. So Matt and I will be discussing something that sort of was a catalyst by this cancellation of our guest, who I will say we will reschedule as soon as possible, sometime in February, most likely. But basically, life happens, and life happened to Cody. He's dealing with stuff. And amidst everything else going on with his life as a creator, things outside of his control and outside of all of our control tends to pop up and rear its ugly head when you least expect it. But this can be a learning lesson, and we have a list of learning lessons here that we'd like to go through today. Is that right, Matt?
It is. And to be clear, the stuff that popped up for him, I don't think he would feel especially doxxed if we said it was like a homeowner issue. He had a bit of a water problem. I had one a few weeks ago that came out of nowhere and ruined my Friday and Saturday and Sunday. But yeah, we don't want you to think he had some like his entire family was in a 19-car pileup. Like, no. I think he's going to be fine. He just had one of those mundane adult issues that you can't afford not to deal with immediately. You have no choice. When water is gushing somewhere, you can't just be like, oh, well, I'll get it done after I send these emails. Like, no, life stops, especially since everybody's working from home now. No, if the sprinkler system went off in the office, everybody would stop working. It's kind of the same thing. And so we started talking about how to absorb those things, and I'm sure that Cody will have his issue sorted out today and be back to normal tomorrow, and whatever. And we generally do that too. You know, I talked about my weird water issue happening, and I sorted it out and, got on with life, whatever. Well, it's pretty easy to live in such a way that you cannot sort things out straight away. And we started talking about what can you do that's going to bury you? What can you do that is just guaranteed to put you in a bad position with all the stuff that we talk about, whether it's your creative pursuits or just generally doing stuff. And we came up with a list of kind of hard and fast truths that are just guaranteed to make things suck for you if you don't avoid these things.
Yeah. How to guarantee you won't make it. I mean, I think, a lot of the things that we especially have been talking about lately, but overall try to discuss on this podcast are choices that you can make or not make, and can lead you down, that meme where one side of the fork in the road is the scary castle and the other one is like the bright and sunny one. So
yeah, with all the things we say too, like when we talk to people and they talk about their experience and the advice they have for people, everything from the straight up operational advice to when we ask people at the end, what makes an interesting person? Well, none of those things are guaranteed to work out. Okay. They are generally very helpful. They generally do work out, but it's not like you can follow a formula and things are going to be great. You're not going to necessarily turn your thing into a full-time pursuit. If you do, it may last 6 months instead of 16 years. Who knows? But I'm comfortable saying that all the stuff we're about to talk about today, if you do those, you are guaranteed to fail. So there's no guarantee on succeeding, but yeah, you can absolutely guarantee failure.
Yeah. It is remarkable how easy it can be to make sure that it will be impossible for you to succeed. It's actually remarkably easy when you think about it.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, why a list like this is useful, because it can be helpful for people to hear, a list of seemingly easy traps to fall into or behaviors to fall into that are, almost virtually impossible for you to kind of clear that hurdle in one way or another. It'll just drown you at the end.
There's this great line, and I'm trying to remember which Solzhenitsyn book, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, where he's talking about the Russian mind. And of course, he himself was Russian and spent a bit of time in the Soviet Gulag. But yeah, he was talking about like a facet of like the Russian mind where they will bear any burden at all and then throw it all away in the end for a glass of vodka. And, he was talking about characters in books and stuff like that. And you will get this sense in quite a bit of Russian literature where people go through just crazy tests of endurance to their psyches and their bodies and whatever, and then just do something ridiculously dumb that is totally preventable. And they just throw away everything they've spent 750 pages working for.
Well, I have one other analogy real quick, and that is a video that we did a couple of years ago on Snakes and Ladders. Snakes and Ladders, if anyone hasn't watched this video, is an extremely old board game. Extremely. When I say extremely old, I don't mean like 100 years. It is centuries old, and you may or may not, but you will now notice that the snakes are much longer than the ladders, and there is a point behind that.
That's right. I forgot about that.
And it has to do with what we were just talking about, where it can be like really easy to slide really far down these snakes, and it can be much harder just to make that incremental progress up the ladder. To see it illustrated mathematically as well as psychologically, then watch my video on it, The Secret of Snakes and Ladders. But this is something that human beings have known for quite a while.
Yeah, and like probably the easiest way to think about it is with food. You can eat 1,000 calories in like 3 minutes. It's going to be awesome. And it's extremely easy to do. But burning 1,000 calories is not a 3-minute endeavor. It takes quite a bit longer and is quite a bit harder to accomplish. So yeah, sliding down, ruining life, all of that stuff is like, oh my God, it's there all the time. The temptations and possibilities, just plain bad judgment too. All of that stuff can ruin you in a snap. So we started talking about all of this stuff and came up with 6 of these things that are snap ruiners, just guaranteed to plumb the depths of suckitude in your life. We're going to pop, because we want to stick to each of these. So I think we're going to pop a timer on each one. I'll do the timer, Kevin.
Okay.
Are you comfortable introducing each of the things?
Yeah, sure. So we'll start with one that we have really spoken about recently. So I think that the timer will come in handy here, just so that we're not like belaboring this one, because it's something, I think it's number one for a reason for us, because you and I see it a lot. and discuss how damaging it is. And it permeates like so much negative and destructive behavior. And every day you see it on social media, in the news, everywhere. It's pervasive, and that is being resentful. So number one, how to guarantee you won't make it. Be resentful. Now, I want to say, first of all, that some people are very successful in their resentment. They can,
Yes.
like, resentment can get you jobs. Resentment can
motivate you.
can get you attention, can get you followers on social media. Like, resentment is really, really powerful, and in many ways can get you ahead. So, so part of this seems like totally contradictory, where you can point to many, many extremely resentful people who are highly successful. But I think in terms of a long-term strategy, so I think perhaps we should couch this first saying, like, what is, if our presupposition is a life well lived, a life full of joy, happiness, personal fulfillment, eudaimonia, whatever it is that, the good life, whatever the good life is, if that's our presupposition, that's our long-term goal, then ultimately, I think for me, and I think that you will agree with this, that resentment can't last. It can't lead there. Not in the long term. Eventually, it's just going to blow up your heart, and you're going to die young because of the negative effects of holding on to all of that just horrible, poisonous fuel.
Yeah, and there are two parts to this. The first thing I want to say on it is, if you want to see this playing out right now, if you want to see this working in action, you look at Ethan Klein from H3H3. Load up the podcast and click one video every 6 months, going back from the beginning up until recent, and you will see a visual of how resentment affects somebody. There you go. It's sort of like in the beginning of Return of the King, where I think it's Return of the King, where they show how Gollum happened. Yeah, well, that's what the one ring of resentment does to somebody. You forget the taste of bread. You turn into the cave dweller. No, it's really unhealthy, and it affects how sharp you are, how good you are. The problem with resentment is that to have it, by default, it means you're paying a lot of attention to other people. You can't be envious or you can't be resentful if you're not spending a ton of time looking at others, because that's what you're resentful about. That's who you're envious of, right? So if you really embrace being resentful and angsty and all of that stuff, you're dedicating so much time to thinking about other people that you're not doing whatever your thing is. You're not spending all your time on you and your pursuits. I feel very, very lucky that I'm not a very envious person. I don't know why. I never really have been. I've been really happy with who I am. Even at the lowest points, I've never thought, like, I wish I could wake up and be this other person. There's no rhyme or reason for that. I'm not saying that I have some superior headspace. No, I just got real lucky that the dominoes fell that way for me in a more natural way than it does for a lot of other people. And I feel so lucky because I don't spend any time thinking about anybody else in that capacity. I just don't. If I'm thinking about somebody else, it's because I'm sincerely interested in them or what they're doing. Or, maybe they've got a problem that I can help with. It's something like that. It's awesome. But when you don't spend any time just thinking about other people, what's wrong with them, why you deserve more than they do, why it sucks that they're successful. So like I point out H3, I'm not resentful that he has a huge amount of daily viewers compared to the Create Unknown. Like, who cares? He does his thing. A lot of people like it. That's awesome. We do our thing. So it's not that, but at the same time, do I think that he's going to have the stress knob turn to 11 for another 10, 15 years sustainably? I don't think so. I don't think that's a healthy way to go about it. And I don't know him personally. I'm not going to pretend to, but I'm not convinced that he loves what he does every day. Well, I do. And if you go down that resentment path that we talked about a lot in the last couple of weeks, we really went into detail there. You are guaranteed to just suck in the end. And it may take 15 minutes and it may take 15 years, or it may just keep you from making it at all. Well, it almost certainly will. But like Kevin said, a lot of people ride the resentment wave to success. But yeah, it's kind of no way to live once you're there. So even if you are the exception, it's going to go badly. It's going to go badly. Nobody had this crazy 75-year career of envy and resentment, and they're like 98 years old, and they're like, ooh, I did that right. Nobody does this. Betty White on her deathbed didn't have to look back and say, like, I spent 75 years hating everybody. No, it doesn't work that way. Dick Van Dyke isn't doing it now that he's like 200 years old and still kicking.
Yeah, I was going to say that there is like more to it than just worrying and thinking about other people. There is some blend there of looking at other people, comparing it to what you have, or hallucinating as to a fictional world in which what other people have and what you have could be different based upon pretty much nothing, your own imagination, like all of that, and doing that continually which is all pretty like in your own head, rather than I think what we try to talk about more on this podcast, which is kind of getting out of your head and doing things and creating things, focusing on whatever it is that you're building, or your own situation with your family, whatever it is that is productive for you and healthy for you. That whole, like being professionally and permanently resentful thing, it just seems like it's a cancerous thing, a cancerous way to live long term. That even the people who do love you for it, there are plenty of other people who will hate you for it, and it's just such a weird. I mean,
it's a lot of energy. It takes up a lot of energy. Well, to wrap it up, because our timer did go off. If it works, and it probably won't, the resentment is going to get you in the end. It simply is not worth the time. It's not worth the time or the stress or the trouble. It is a tremendous amount of work to pay attention to other people and how and why they suck. And if you don't believe that, follow people in the commentary community, because their videos, their content depends on kind of calling out others. It is a shocking amount of work. And all of that can probably be marshaled better. It can be put toward more useful things in your own life. I don't know what you've been sipping, but you've got it all wrong. It's time to commit to the Leaf. We've embraced the smoothness and surprising pick-me-up that tea provides. I literally drink it all day long, nearly a gallon a day, and it powers me through research, script writing, and forums on websites that I refuse to name here. But we don't drink normie NPC tea. We drink cultured and refined anime tea from the Dragon's Treasure. Kevin still likes the gunpowder green called Space Cowboy, and I've sampled nearly 40 Dragon's Treasure teas at this point. Lately, I've been slamming black teas like Kentucky Bourbon and Liquefied Berserk Despair. Scottish Breakfast is deep and peaty, and I smooth it over with Sebastian's Morning Earl Grey, which has the best vanilla cream taste I think I've ever had in a cup. Give me a pot of that with a hot meatball sub from Sal's Pizza and Brooks Barbecue Chicken to wash down my last meal on death row. I highly recommend the sampler packs. You'll want to try everything just like I did. I literally have not had one tea that I wouldn't be happy to reorder. The Dragon's Wings membership fuels new tea experimentation, and the Tea of the Month Club provides a regularly scheduled surprise. And when you order from the Dragon's Treasure using code CREATE, you'll get 10% off your order. That's 10% off using the code CREATE at thedragonstreasure.com. The link's in the description.
All right, that's it. That's it for number one, which was be resentful. Number two is very simply, we just wrote down be a disaster, which is pretty vague. So I'd love for you to expand upon exactly what you mean by be a disaster, because I think that not being a disaster is what sort of kicked off this idea where if something pops up like your basement is flooding, well, not being a disaster makes that situation a lot more manageable to deal with. Being a disaster could make that situation 1,000 times harder than it needs to be.
Yeah, that's a very vague, vague description. But it encompasses a lot of things. And you think about, like, what are the things that you need to have in place to pretty much live decently? And some of it is really, really basic. You can't eat like an idiot and expect that to go well after 20 years. Like, it just doesn't work. I mean, you can be 15 and eat pizza for every breakfast, and that's fine. But if you do it for 25 years, your energy isn't going to be there. Like, you're going to develop all sorts of difficulties, probably. There's some basics like eating and sleeping that if you don't nail those, it's going to add up. And it's so tempting to think that stuff is normal when you're like constantly pulling all-nighters and whatever. There's a point at which you can't do it anymore, and that's when you realize, like, oh, it wasn't healthy to begin with. I was just much more able to absorb it. Well, if you realize that there are a couple basic things like eating, sleeping, moving around, not getting into tremendous consumer debt, being able to to have a consistent place to live, just all of these basic elements of your life, you really truly have to focus on nailing those. It's not always possible to nail them. You may not have a job right now, or you may have a job that is not, what you see yourself doing or what you want to do, whatever. You still work on those things and you prioritize those basics because they matter a lot more than they seem, especially when you're younger and you can absorb all the problems. It's a little flippant to say not doing those things constitutes you being a disaster, but at the same time, it's kind of true.
Well, eventually, especially over time, I think that it, again, is important to perhaps couch all of these as over time strategies, like long-term strategies, because like being a disaster when you're younger kind of is fine. I mean, there are times in your life when you want to experiment and kind of be a little reckless and do things that you hopefully.
Anything you want to confess here, Kevin?
I mean, no. I mean, other than that series of murders. Other than that, no. But you know what I mean. Like this could be misconstrued as like a be overly bubble wrapped and protective rule, and that's bad. That would be bad advice as well.
That pendulum is swinging too far the other way. Yeah,
I think so. We have read studies recently that suggest that the pendulum has swung way too far into the bubble wrap and never take any risks side, which is absolutely its own danger and leads to other problems. So there is a time and a place for being a disaster, for sure, and perhaps people
taking risks, too.
Taking risks, like doing dumb stuff. It kind of should be part of your life at some point, but eventually, no. That's not a good long-term strategy, and neither is being a disaster. I have like a more specific analogy, I think, to just go back to this flooding basement. So,
okay,
let's say that you have this basement that you should have been cleaning and maintaining, and you have ignored for a dozen years, and it's stacked to the ceiling with cardboard boxes and junk and God knows what else. recyclables and like all sorts of things you've just thrown into the basement, Christmas decorations that you don't use anymore, old electronics. And, it's a hoarder's paradise, floor to ceiling down in that basement. Okay. Well, that scenario in which water is flooding that basement is going to be way more of a problem to deal with than someone who has cleaned, maintained, and sort of kept organized their basement.
Yeah.
If your basement is clean and organized and you have things on off the floor and on like metal racks, things done like nicely and properly and put away and stored nicely and properly. Perhaps they're in, like plastic containers that are sealed instead of cardboard boxes that will get mushy and destroyed with water. Like there are a lot of steps you could take here, right? Practical steps you could take here so that if the flood hits, it's a lot less of a problem overall than if you ignored it. So I think that is sort of an easy to understand analogy that can extend to many different avenues and many different situations of many different people's lives where, the be a disaster road makes things super hard, and sort of like the be on top of things road doesn't make the problem not suck, because the problem's going to suck. But with probabilistic thinking, you can understand how a problem can suck, 15% less, 70% less than the 100% suck of this flooded hoarding basement.
It's funny that you say the metal racks thing, because my water disaster in the basement was alleviated because in months before I'd done everything you said and like finally cleaned stuff up, and it made the bad situation just bad and not a true crisis. But I want to say two things. The first one, I'm going to lead with the grim one. Okay. And then I'll go to the happier, more fun one. In October or so, my mom had a massive medical disaster, right? And it was one of those things that's like a life-changing thing for everybody. Well, if I hadn't spent the 6 months before that getting myself in reasonable shape, nailing the food and the sleep and the activity, getting a lot more relaxed, reducing anxiety as a result of those things, catching up on work properly and all that, then absorbing that surprise and all the things that came with it would have been 10 times harder. It sucked very badly. There's nothing that anybody can do about that sort of thing. It pops when it pops. But I was in a position to handle it much better than if it had happened even 6 months prior. So I was a lot less of a disaster. And then when disaster struck, I could get through it. And I'm so thankful at how lucky I was to have the timing work on that, because it would have broken me if it had happened a year before. So that is huge. Number two is, I mentioned in the past, at one point I played a lot of cards in a lot of parts of the world. I played a lot of poker mostly. The number one important thing with playing cards, to win at cards, if you do it often, is to be in physical shape. And this is not a joke. This is not one of those like, ooh, you'll never believe this one neat trick kind of things. It's as simple as this. You need to be able to sit and focus on the thing for as long as it's profitable. As an example, I used to play with a friend in Las Vegas. We would go out, and I simply had much more endurance. He was a much better card player. He would start to wane about 3-4 hours into a good game. I didn't. If the table was good and it was profitable for 10 hours, I could stay for 10 hours. If it was 14, I could stay for 14. That made all the difference. I did much better than he did, with like a third of the talent and a tenth of the knowledge, because I was just able to, kind of keep it together longer. That's the same with really everything we talk about. Like, if you take care of the basics, then you can execute your stuff way longer. Like, now that I feel better, I've taken care of those basics, I get probably 25% more productive time each day. Some days it's half. And I bet some days I take total loser days and turn them into something. What would have been a, total loss a while ago. So do not discount the value of extremely, extremely basic things. They're basic for a reason. It goes back just generations where the benefits of this stuff are baked in to the oldest philosophies. There's a reason why in biblical texts there's a day of rest built in. If you truly grind 7 days a week every single day, this is suboptimal in the long term. That's not good for anybody. So you do have to nail just all those things. And it doesn't matter if you're playing cards or making YouTube videos or whatever. You need to be as sharp as possible for as long as possible. And you need to be able to absorb whatever blow happens to you. I mentioned consumer debt a little bit ago as well, where if you do have some crazy thing that hits your life, if you're already in $1 billion of debt, it's really hard to take care of that. If you haven't bought every Funko Pop that's ever been released and you're in $39,000 of avoidable debt, well, maybe some terrible thing happens to you and you need to take a flight that you book that day that's $950 and grab a hotel room in another city because, somebody's been in an accident. Okay, you can eat that $2,000 horrible surprise and then deal with it later, chip away at it over time, whatever. But it's not going to completely ruin you, not for life. But if you start out, 40 grand deep, then if some insane thing happens to you, could be the breaking point.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And that's the timer, by the way.
I was going to say
happened as I was.
Yeah, I figured that
monologuing.
That was about 8 minutes on that one. All right. So number 1, be resentful. Number 2, be a disaster. Number 3 is hope you get lucky. Luck is undoubtedly and without argument part of any successful person's success. So what exactly is it about the statement hope that you get lucky or hoping to get lucky that guarantees that you won't make it?
Yeah, this all came from a conversation I was having with, I got to start the timer. This all came from a conversation I was having with Charles Kahn. And he made such a good point that you have to be ready to capitalize on anything. I don't know how many times I've seen an opportunity come through for somebody and they're not ready for a very simple reason. Now, one thing that's popped up lately is because of the time of year, internships and stuff like that they start putting their ads out in December, January, whatever, and that fits in between university semesters and all that. So the resume and /CV and cover letter discussions happen. Well, here's an example of how you can be ready. 99% of people see a listing and think, I've got to get a resume together for this. I have to write a cover letter for this. And then they begin the task here. The elite, the 1% of the 1%, have those things done, ready to go. They see the listing they want. They adjust their cover letter or, write a new section for it, plug and play, whatever they have to do. And an hour later, they have submitted an application for the opportunity that they've been looking for. That's the difference between being ready and being reactive and hoping you have the time to sort out the cover letter and resume. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're on vacational break. I don't know. Maybe it's just a really bad time in your life and you're strained. Could be anything. But you have to be ready and willing to take whatever opportunity comes through because you just don't have a lot of time on it. Almost all the time, you've got a short little clock, and it's nice to be the first. Most people are not in a position to be the first, but you have no idea when any opportunity is going to hit. You just have to be ready for everything all the time. Is that feasible, Kevin? Do you think that's
well? I don't know about every
thing to say.
I don't know about everything, but as much as you can, sure. I think that there's a phrase that you make your own luck that's pretty applicable here. I think that sort of fits in with the thesis of this idea because, well, it involves you. It involves you doing something in order to engage with the luck. Luck isn't necessarily something that just falls into your lap or something that happens to you, although it does in some regard, but it really is a relationship. Luck is a relationship between the work that you put in ahead of time and perhaps this like serendipitous, the stars align, sort of whatever you want to call it, thing occurring, right? I mean, let me just give you the example of what happened with me and Vsauce. Okay, so how did I get involved with Vsauce? Okay, well, I was making YouTube videos for years by myself for not a whole lot of fan base, not a huge amount of people, for $0, really with like no inclination that it would be more than $0 sort of tomorrow or the next day. But Michael Stevens found those videos, liked my sense of humor. He has this very similar sense of humor as I do. And then asked me if I wanted to submit some of the videos to this new thing no one had ever heard of called Vsauce. That was a brand new channel. And I thought, yeah, why not? And that actually kind of will go into number 6 later, me saying yes to that. But the point is that I was not sitting around or going to my 3 day jobs that I had at the time and then coming home and just opining the fact that I had no other opportunity in, comedy writing or a creative field. I was leaving work. I was leaving my day job and doing my night job, which was at that time writing comics and jokes and making YouTube videos. So there was plenty of work involved on my end in order for that piece of luck or opportunity to manifest to begin with. And pretty much everything works this way. I'm sure that there are some outliers of an outlier where some like bizarre happenstance leads to someone getting some ridiculous opportunity. I'm sure that, nepotism is one of those things where you just happen to be born as Tom Hanks's son, and lo and behold, now you're you're on Dexter season 5 or whatever. But aside from those extremely rare circumstances, well, yeah, you have to put in the work in order to even have a chance for luck to be involved as part of the equation of your success.
You do, and people talk all the time that's like about things like grinding away until you get your shot, until you get your break, whatever. The real question here is, when that happens, are you in a position to take advantage of it? It's really that simple. If you're not in a position to take advantage of the good thing when it comes along, then it might as well have not come along at all. You have to be ready for that. I mean, it's odd because you have to think it's on the way at any minute, but you also have to think it's never coming. You have to hold both of these things in your head at the same time. Grind away like it doesn't matter and it's never going to matter. Grind away like 5 minutes from now, the best opportunity ever is going to land in your lap. But you do have to be ready to take advantage of that. That's really the difference. It's really the difference. And as you spend more time and know more people who do creative stuff, you will start to see with the people you know, how many of them miss chances that have come their way because they were not prepared, they were not ready, and then they will slowly rationalize why it was never a chance at all. That this thing or that thing was wrong about it, or, it was a bad time, or, actually it wasn't that good. They will come up with every reason possible for why it wasn't the big break that it obviously was. The truth is that they just weren't ready for it. And if they had been, they would have taken it and, lived happily ever after, but they didn't. So don't be that person. You can't control and be ready for everything. But like Conrad pulled the quote here, be ready for everything you can be ready for. And then when that stuff pops up, it'll seem like luck. But the truth is that you are just in a position to take advantage of the opportunity. And that is, wow, if you don't do that, it's never going to work out for you. It's not going to happen. You're going to miss it. You're going to miss every decent opportunity that comes your way. The big break, no, it's not happening. So if you aren't ready, it will not work.
Well, and also you probably just congratulations, set yourself up for one of the biggest regrets of your life. I mean, how could you not then, feel regretful afterwards that you missed out on that thing? For some reason, I was thinking of Hulk Hogan and the George Foreman grill. Do you know this story?
Was he up for that? No.
Oh,
what happened?
I was just looking it up because I was like, was this an example of what we're talking about? And I couldn't really discern sort of heads or tails of whether or not it really does line up with this hope you get lucky thing. But yes, supposedly, according to Hulk Hogan, he was offered the George Foreman grill sponsorship. I guess it would have been the Hulk Hogan grill. And there are two different stories as to why it went to George Foreman instead. One is that he was picking up his kids and he missed a phone call from his agent. And in the meantime, before he could call him back, it went to George Foreman, which that sounds kind of weird. And then the other one was that his agent presented him with two options. One was the grill and one was like a meat grinder or something. And he went with the meat grinder instead of the grill. I don't know. Either way, Google Hulk Hogan George Foreman grill if you want to just stick some useless information in your brain after this podcast or during this podcast. Just pause now and read about that. Although I don't think that you'll really come away being a better person either way, since it seems like the actual story is in total dispute as to what occurred.
We want to help you make something and mean something. And we say that phrase all the time because when you're making something and you know it means something, even if it's just to you, that's when you feel pretty good about what you're creating. The support for the Create Unknown in recent weeks has been incredible. Animators, artists, musicians, YouTubers, aspiring filmmakers, comedians, it is crazy how talented everybody in this community is. Consider joining the Create Unknown Patreon. Every dollar that comes through goes straight into the podcast and its community. That means more highlights videos. It means a big Minecraft project that's on the way. And eventually we'd like to manufacture custom piss bottles so you never have to leave your battle station. And being a patron unlocks participation in all of our live recordings. You've seen the roster of guests we've had. Having access to their minds is a unique opportunity. You can go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown or click the link that's in the description. Every little bit helps and your support means absolutely everything to us. Patreon.com/thecreateunknown, links in the description. We appreciate you, Space Cowboys.
So, all right. Are we good on to move on to number 4?
We're good. The timer has timed.
Okay. So to recap, number 1, be resentful. Number 2, be a disaster. Number 3, hope you get lucky. Number 4, isolate yourself. Now, number 4, I think it might be the most relevant one to kind of all of us these days. Since
Can I cheat and give this a 10-minute timer instead of 8?
Okay. We're going to cheat on isolate yourself.
It's just too big. It's too important.
Yeah. So I think that we should start off with isolate yourself as a topic by stating that this is a growing concern and problem that we are not making up. This is not Kevin and Matt are, pontificating on the podcast about things that they think are a problem. There is a growing body of research and literature in fields of psychology that are really kind of proving that loneliness, isolation, lack of connection, lack of friendships, lack of intimate relationships, all of these things, pretty much every single metric measurable has seen a substantial decline, not only over the past 3 or 4 generations, but really ramping up in Gen Z, and I think everyone could anecdotally understand ramping up since COVID.
Yeah, and this is not a like, oh, you need to touch grass kind of thing. It's not that. It's quite a bit more serious and broad. So, Kevin, what are some of the specifics that we saw in, like, we were looking at a specific study the other day, and there was a massive decline in teens who had been on a date. That was one, right? Like in our generation, it was like 71%, and now it's something like 50. Is that fair?
I don't want to make up numbers because I don't remember, but some of the measured items were percentage that have had a boyfriend or girlfriend, percentage that have drank alcohol, which is a social activity, especially for young people, percentage of people that have had a paying job, which again tends to be a social activity outside of your school peer group, is that you work whatever at a restaurant or at a supermarket, and you interact with different people at work than you do at school or at home. And
all of these things are really about like integrating with the world around you, aren't they?
Real quick,
whether it's friends or what?
The other one was even number of friends. So like the number of reported friends that people have generation to generation has declined.
Yeah. All of these things point to isolation. And the other half of almost every one of these studies is that, guess what? These people are unhappier than past generations. They don't feel as good right now, and they don't feel as good about their prospects down the line.
Hold on real quick, Matt. Unhappiness as reported by increases specifically in depression and anxiety. So that's how they measure. Yes. That's how that's measured. Yeah.
Yep. We did a full episode on networking and how important that is. We've talked a lot of times about getting off the island, about integrating with just everything in the whatever sphere you're in, the people and the process that makes it all run the way it does. This is different, though. This is a different flavor, kind of a different strain. A lot of people are truly isolated, and replying to tweets is not enough. That's not it. Now, I didn't fully appreciate any of this until about a week ago. Kevin started talking about how amazing the alternatives are. Like how amazing terrible food for you actually tastes. How good video games are. Netflix is just like, it's awesome. It's really awesome. It's hard to do the hard things. Like in the past, the alternatives weren't so good. I mean, like I'm thinking back to, 1991. Let's say when you still called people on the phone, your friends, to talk to them. It's 1991. Do you want to call your friend and talk about whatever, probably something stupid and useless? Or do you want to watch Night Court on TV? And if you don't know how, it was a funny show, but I use this because it's being rebooted now. So like the people who missed out the first time around are going to be able to understand this soon. Well, it wasn't that hard of a choice. Now it's like, well, do you want to call somebody or do you want to engage in any of the best activities in the whole of human history that are perfectly catered to you and your interests? You can't beat that. You have to really go out of your way to do things. It's like, I'm going to go work a job that I probably don't want to do. The jobs that high school kids get are not usually jobs they want to do. I'm going to do that. I'm going to have a social interaction that is something I'm not used to, whether it's asking somebody out on a date and facing a decent probability of rejection, whether it's trying to make new friends, which is its own circle in hell. It's so hard. All these things where the outcome can be anxiety inducing and difficult. The alternative is, well, I don't do any of that. And instead I get the best fulfillment ever, instantly, never ending. Well, that's true, but you also set up this total isolation. Oh, and that doesn't work out. That doesn't work out professionally, personally, individually. It just doesn't.
Well, that's what I was thinking of when we were talking about this last week. Is like, yeah, the options are: do I do this thing that I'm uncomfortable with, that might make me uncomfortable, that might go badly, that I might feel bad about, that might be awkward, or do I do exactly what I know I really like to do, which is, play Minecraft or watch my favorite streamer or like literally any
Totino's in Final Fantasy VII.
Yes, play this new video game or watch this new show that I'm addicted to and I'm just binge watching these things that are all designed explicitly to be amazing, and they are. Mm-hmm. Man, that's a really hard sell. It's a really hard sell to say, no, don't do that. Like, don't play this unbelievably amazing video game all night. What you should do is go to the mall and like meet people that you may have nothing in common with. Like, that's a ridiculous proposition. So I actually don't even have actionable advice on how to get around this, because it's a problem
me either.
That seems intractable to me right now.
I say me either, but this is absolutely the core of me putting hurt in the tagline of hurt, hate, and be happy. This is the hurt that I'm talking about, where you do the stuff that maybe you're going to be like literally in pain the next day. You did something, you worked hard enough that you're going to be sore the next day. Or you take a shot and ask somebody out and get shot down and feel terrible about it. You've got to do these things that have the potential to, or definitely will, bring some kind of pain. But you understand that it's a good, productive pain. Does that make sense? It's like people who lift weights. If they lift weights and they aren't sore, they're not building muscle. They haven't worked out hard enough to advance anything at all. Well, a lot of things work that way. You have to take risks and be extremely vulnerable and usually pay a price. You usually pay a price for the good things that matter. And sometimes it's physical. Sometimes it is mental or emotional. It could be anything. It can be social too. But you've really got to hurt. And if you don't hurt in those ways, you are probably isolated. You probably are operating totally untethered with everything that matters in the world. You probably sit there and browse Reddit and Twitter and have very strong political opinions, and you're certain about everything that goes on in the world, yet you're entirely isolated from it.
Yeah, I think that the only potentially useful advice that I would ever give on this, which I'm sure a lot of people would reject whole cloth, but it might work out for some, is really to get a crappy job. Like, get some stupid job, whether it is, washing dishes or bussing tables, mowing lawns, painting houses, like something to get you out of the house, to get around other people who you wouldn't interact with. Because the thing is that in those situations, you have forced time with other people that you can't manufacture in any other way. Like, you can't really manufacture a way to hang out with people the way that it happens when you work like at a restaurant, say, where there's like a whole eclectic mix of different people from different walks of lives with different goals and different attitudes and different backgrounds and different interests, that now you are forced to learn how to present yourself to, learn, more about yourself, more about other people, more about them. Even if, it's like, well, I'm not going to do this for $6 an hour or whatever it is. It's like, well, it's possible. Could I throw out the fact that there are intangible benefits here, aside from the paycheck, that you cannot possibly know what they'll be later because they are intangible. That's what an intangible thing is. That I could promise you will almost virtually guarantee it will pay off somehow, some way, someday. But Again,
Yeah.
those are just words. Like how could you, who's going to listen to that
Yeah,
and be like, yeah, I'm definitely going to do that instead of playing Fortnite? I don't know.
What we can do is check in on every single person in the Discord chat right now, for example. In 25 years, identify the ones who have isolated themselves and then see how it's worked out. Episode 3913 of the Create Unknown is going to be the wrap up where we see how isolation has worked out for people in the community. That'll be the proof of our just words, because it's definitely going to go real bad.
But one other thing that is extremely important to mention, and we cannot move on without mentioning the fact that you and I sympathize 1,000,000% with people who want to be left alone.
We do.
You are not going to find two people anywhere in any walk of life that appreciate their alone time more than Matt and I. So this isn't a personality thing. Like, we're not coming at this from a, introverts are weird and smelly and stupid. It's like, no.
That is not it.
That is not it at all. It should be, I would hope, more compelling coming from people who do prefer isolation, that we're saying, look, that is not a great long-term strategy for developing anything in your life. It just isn't.
No, and we are that way we are now because we've gotten past the opening stage of careers. I said to Kevin before we started this episode, like, I am one of the most isolated people I know. However, I have an incredibly strong, diverse network of people internationally that I have built over nearly 25 years that I can tap for any reason at any time. I've done my network building and my non-isolation in many countries of the world. Now I'm quite happy to be left alone. But that's because I've already done it. I'm not actually isolated. I'm just like removed from the network that I can jump back in at any time. So there's that. And like, as an example of this, I really laughed because a couple days, whatever the last day that mail came before the new year, I don't know if it was the 31st or the 30th, whatever. I went out to get the mail, and down the road, my closest neighbors were walking, and they shouted Happy New Year to me. I was like, oh, same to you, same to you. Went in the house, and I realized that was the only time that I had spoken to them all year. The only interaction that I had with them in 2022 was them saying Happy New Year to me minutes before the year was over.
See you next year. and been totally satisfied with the interaction.
But that's how isolated I am, and I'm quite happy with that. I really like my life, but I also love. I mean, we talked a lot about enjoying events that we go to and the people there. I had a ball at the last VidCon with, a bunch of people who are involved in this community, and the creators we know and stuff. I like all of that. That's really good. If you just play the isolation game, there's nothing for you, and the opportunities aren't going to flow your way, and you won't have anybody to commiserate with when things go badly, and so you'll stew in your own head. You will wonder why good things are happening in the world, but they don't seem to be happening to you. If you think about the stuff that we've talked about earlier today in the first 3 little guaranteed to ruin you bits, and also in the past few weeks, a lot of them go along with isolation. And like Kevin opened with, now we're beginning to see irrefutable quantitative proof that isolation is happening for younger people, not so much our generation, but the Gen Zs and the current teens and all of that stuff. They still have time to fix it. And the people who avoid that isolation and the ones who make the connections and the networks and all of that, oh my God, are they going to have a leg up? They're going to be at the front of the line for everything. Yeah. We never had that because everybody was kind of doing it, and you had to be the best at it. Now, simply doing it is going to automatically put you in like the top 10% of everything.
Yeah, just show up. Okay. Well, how are we on time? Did we hit 10 minutes on that?
We did. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
We did.
All right. So here comes number 5. Number 5 is obsess over originality. Now, why do you think obsessing over originality will guarantee that you won't make it?
I think that it makes it virtually certain that you won't make anything at all. I think it's pretty close to impossible. And also, there's this. Sorry, I just punched the microphone. It's strange that people think originality is what others value, that they even want to see something that is new and original.
Oh, that's interesting.
They kind of don't.
Yeah. No.
They just don't.
No.
I don't. Kevin, have you ever read a book series that has like 100 books in it?
No.
Where it's like a formulaic thing. So I'm thinking of young adult kind of things. The Hardy Boys books are like this. The Warrior Cats books that I've referenced a bunch of times are like this. Well, the author name on the Warrior series is Erin Hunter. Erin Hunter was actually 3 different women who worked together to write these books. Frank Dixon with the Hardy Boys. I mean, that was the name on the front, but I think at a point, other people were just ghostwriting these. They're wildly successful series that are not like shockingly original. Everyone is kind of the same as the one before it. A lot of people are pretty happy with most of the movies being reboots now. We've talked about like 90% of the top grossing movies being continuations of franchises or reboots of old movies. Well, they're still grossing. It's not like that list is like the top 10 losing movies of the year.
No, that was going to be my point exactly, was look at Hollywood. It's just the same.
Yeah.
Especially these days. It's like, okay, it's all franchise. It's all franchise because it's franchise. And also the other thing that's really important are stars. So part of the reason that someone becomes a star in Hollywood is that people will pay money to see them repeatedly. Why do they like that? Why do you want to see another Tom Cruise thing when it's not? How much suspension of disbelief can you even achieve when you're looking at Tom Cruise? This happened to me trying to watch the Last Duel recently, which was a Ridley Scott film that bombed. Which could go into, like people don't want original things. I'm sitting there watching The Last Duel, and I'm just staring at Matt Damon with this stupid goatee, and I can't get into the movie because all I can think of is that I'm just watching Matt Damon with a stupid goatee pretending to be a French knight, and I couldn't get over it. I turned it off. I stopped watching it.
Well, if you as a creator think, everything I do has to be original or it's going to be shit or nobody's going to like it, it's just not going to work for you. It's not. It won't. Kevin, imagine if on Vsauce 2, you had to invent every math paradox that you made a video about. Like you sit down to invent a paradox that you can then make a video of instead of, well, taking a paradox that's existed for 3,000 years and coming up with a fresh angle on it. Is your content derivative? I mean, yes, in the sense that you didn't invent that math or that paradox, but no, in that you're doing a fresh take on it. But I don't know how many people I talk to who want to do YouTube channels, but they think that their idea, like 50 people are doing the idea already. Well, they probably are. So what? So what? If you think about this in any other context at all, it would sound idiotic. It would sound so stupid if you thought, I want to write truly original songs that don't sound like anybody else. So I'm just not going to listen to any music, period. How is that going to work out? I want to write a book that is not, I want to write a fantasy series that isn't, yet another derivative piece of Lord of the Rings. Well, so I'm not going to read any fantasy novel. Yes, your thing is very likely to be different. I bet it will be unique. It's also going to suck balls. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be awful. It's completely okay to to be derivative. It's even okay if it's 0% original. I mentioned the warrior cats thing because I think about like fictional small animals all the time. Like many times a day, I'm thinking about like squirrel characters and chipmunks and rabbits and foxes and like anything. If it's smaller than a dog, I think about it fictionally like 10 times a day. I wish
so
I
weird.
could just write stories. I wish I could write stories about these animals with all my time. And I can guarantee you that they would be 0% original. They would be just like so many of the series that came before and the books that came before. That's okay. That's what I want to do. That's what people would like also. It's totally fine. And if I sat down and thought, I want to have some stories that involve a rabbit and a squirrel and a chipmunk and a fox, what can make this 100% original? I am going to be 87 years old before I get the first chapter of that book done.
Real quick, this reminds me of something that I read like last month. I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something, the gist of it was that people, when it comes to probably anything in regards to entertainment, they want to know what's going to happen, but they want to be surprised with how it happens. So
Yeah, that's
I'll
cool.
say that
I like
again.
that.
The things that people like, they like because they know what's going to happen, but they are surprised how it happens. And half of that equation is they know what's going to happen. The trick and the job of the creator, which is their own spin, you could say, is the sparkle dust of twisting how you get there. But people have to know where they are first. They're not just going to wander into a desert blind and assume and start from scratch with no idea, no signposts and no connection and no context as to your thing. No, they're going to go to a place they're already familiar with, and then they're going to be happy with, you know, the surprise that you, the personality that you have, whatever, the twist, however you want to articulate it. That is what people
I wish
like.
I could, yeah. It is. They want to have a sense of what's coming, but yeah, then have it be a surprise. Like, I wish I could think of a more contemporary, better known film than this, but because I am isolated and do nothing and talk to nobody, the best I can do is The Departed, because you know from pretty early on, like a quarter into that movie, this is with Matt Damon, Mark Wahlberg, I forget who else is in The Departed. The plot begins to intertwine in a way that Jack Nicholson, that's right, is not going to work out for these people. It's, instantly that it is literally impossible for this to continue much longer the way it is. And that it's going to go very, very badly for somebody. And then you watch the movie to find out what goes badly, how, and who it goes badly for. You don't know that until it all resolves. But this is going to happen. Like, you're waiting for that shoe to drop. It's a boot that's going to stomp, and it keeps building and building to that. But then you're totally surprised by how it actually happens. Woo! Got a little timer action. You can do that with something that's the same kind of structure as another thing. Even The Departed, which intertwines cops and mobsters, that's not original. There are literally 100 years of movies that are structured in that way, and it was a great movie. I liked it a lot. It's one of my favorites. And I still, the important part wasn't the originality. It was that structure that Kevin's talking about. And then there was a lot of original stuff along the way, things that made it really compelling and awesome and, action oriented and like good characters and everything. It's fine. But if the idea was like, I've got to sit down and write a film concept that is 100% original, that movie never gets made.
That's the point I was going to make, because we never actually addressed why this is a problem. It's a problem because you can get paralyzed by this impossible,
100%.
a possible notion of creating this completely original thing. So just don't worry about that.
No. You will do nothing if you're obsessed over originality. You will do absolutely nothing. And whether it's music, whether it's writing, anything, if you're obsessed with making sure that nobody has done anything like every piece of it before, you will do nothing.
Yeah, so that's a good way to guarantee you won't make it, by doing nothing.
Not to start at all.
Yeah. All right, here's our last one. Our last one, okay, I need to expand upon this because number 6 just says say no.
This is your point.
This is my point. I guess we just wrote this down like way too vaguely and briefly. So say no. What the actual point is that is actually to say yes. Well, say no will guarantee you won't make it. Here. Let me back up a second.
Saying yes gives you a shot.
Saying yes to something, even if 90% of you wants to say no to this opportunity, is something that you should do. You should say yes. So saying no to a thing that you should say yes to will guarantee you won't make it. Because if you say no, well, then it won't happen. So, that's really kind of pretty cut and dry as far as how this rule fits in with the other 5, because you're just avoiding the thing that could have turned out amazingly for you, and now you'll never know. So I have a couple of stories from my life in which I said yes to things that I was really uncomfortable with. So like we said in Isolate Yourself briefly, I personally am a person who likes to keep to himself. I am definitely pretty hard on the introvert side. I like to do my own thing, and getting outside of my comfort zone is something that I do with hesitation every single time. Like almost no matter what the opportunity is, I am hesitant to say yes. So this rule might only apply to people like me. So maybe I should preface it with that, is if you are the type of person that I am, when you're asked to do something, and your first response is, well, let me just say that if you say no to every single one of those, then you're just closing a door every single time. Like objectively closing the door every single time and not even allowing the opportunity for whatever that is to blossom into something unimaginably good. And the type of things that are unimaginably good that other people look at and think to themselves, well, how did that person get that? How did that person get that opportunity? How did they get there? What did you do to get to where you are? Like, these are some of the most common and first thoughts that people will have when they're trying to do anything and they are using someone who is successful or where they're at as a model for what they should do. Is they think, how did you get here? How did you become a writer on Late Night with Conan O'Brien? How did you become Vsauce 2? How did you become the center fielder for the New York Yankees? Well, probably you're a pretty good athlete, and that's a good place to start. But the point is, there were a few times earlier in my life in which I was presented with an opportunity from somebody else who noticed what I was doing and thought I would be good at doing something. And they said, hey, you really should do this. One concrete example has to do with an improv comedy group that I was in college. So I was aware of this college improv group. They were very, very popular on campus. They performed actually off campus. One of the people from this group is Nice Peter from Epic Rap Battles of History. He was in it a few years before I was. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So if anybody knows Epic Rap Battles of History, he was in this college improv comedy group. I think he might have graduated the year before I got there. So anyway, everybody knew this comedy group. They were pretty popular on campus. It's a small campus, and it was a thing that everybody did once a month. They would go see this comedy show. I went and kind of, I guess, coincidentally ended up in a class with the director of that comedy group. I was in a public speaking class with the girl who directed it. We sat next to each other. She thought I was funny just in class, just with like the banter that you have kind of before and after classes. And she asked me to audition for the group. This was not something that I had in mind at all. Like I had not thought like, yeah, what I really want to do is get in front of like hundreds of people. This shows were performed in an old opera house, absolutely beautiful opera house in town. So I don't know. It just felt like a lot of pressure. It was like very anxiety inducing to even think about like getting up. And it's a small comedy group. It's just you and, like 8 other people. It's not like you can hide, and you really can't hide when, you're the main person in one of the games on stage in front of hundreds of people.
And you didn't do any of the theater stuff in high school, did you? I don't remember. Like you didn't do performing stuff in that same vein, did you?
I did the senior play for similar reasons, where the woman who directed it asked me to do a specific role, and I was like, okay. And I did it. And actually, I did like doing that. But I only had to memorize like 3 lines. It was really easy.
Yeah, that's totally different.
It was not walking out on stage in front of a couple of hundred like drunk college students and literally just trying to make up being funny on the spot, which is what.
Yeah, that sounds nightmarish.
That was a much different thing. So anyway, so she asked me to, because she thought I was funny, like, please audition for the thing. And I'm like, okay. I didn't want to, and I did it. And I ended up being pretty good. I made the audition. I made it onto, into the group. I was selected as one of like a few people that year that made it into the group. When she graduated, she ended up making me co-director of the group. So
that worked out.
Not only was this a thing that I didn't really want to do, and convinced myself to try, and then made it into it, I ended up running the thing within the next year or so. And now I was in charge of everybody. So you just don't know. Like, and if I had said no, and if I had given in to my anxious feelings and being afraid of putting myself out there like that, none of that would have happened. And I'm still friends with some of the people, from that group 20 years later. I met Nice Peter one time and was able to give him like a funny anecdote that we were both in this comedy group a couple of years apart. So, and certainly that ended up aiding me in ways that I can't quantify now. So, and this has happened a couple other times, but we don't have to spend the rest of the podcast talking about it. But there have been several instances for me in my life in which I wanted to say no. I was about to say no. I said yes, and I don't regret it. And I had a great time and a lot of great things. And I have a lot of great memories as a result of that.
Yep. Yeah. There are a couple of reasons to say no to, and it can be discomfort, like you said, that sounded kind of awkward and anxiety inducing and not really what you were up for, but you pushed yourself through it and that worked out. I had a scheduling thing pop when I was in college where one class fit what I needed for a requirement. However, that class basically gave me a 9-hour in the classroom day on Tuesdays. It started at 8 a.m. and finished at 9 p.m. I remember there's a 1-hour break at lunch and then one from 5 to 6. And I thought, this is too much of a grind. This is grueling. I don't want to do this. I will wait, until next year when I can choose something that is better. I didn't want the discomfort of it. I changed my mind, and I ended up encountering a professor who was extremely influential for me. He was incredible at what he did with history and the arts and writing and all these things, and it completely altered my trajectory in the college setting. And I can't imagine how things would have turned out if that hadn't happened. I just don't know. I cannot picture it. And it set me up for many, many years of, like I mentioned, going to other countries and having some sense of what those places were when I got there and what I was doing there. It made all the difference. And it could have been negated, could have never happened for something as dumb as I don't want to have to power through Tuesdays 13 times a year, one time in my life. Like when I look back at it now, that's such a stupidly small price to pay. But at the time, I'm like, oh, this is an insurmountable problem. I can't possibly have a Tuesday like that. Yeah, it's crazy. But there's so many reasons to say no. It's not just the things that in that little vignette and in Kevin's stories. A lot of people say no because they don't feel like they're valued enough. Like the money isn't good enough for what they're doing. They're worth more. Well, here's the truth. You're worth $0 in most ways. Everybody in the episode chat right now, as a masseuse, to me, you are worth $0. I don't want you to touch me. I don't want a massage right now. I will not pay you anything to touch me right now. No, there are circumstances in which your value is 0. And it's actually a lot of circumstances. And people are always saying, charge what you're worth, like get that bag. Well, you have to demonstrate your value first. And that's something that I think Kevin and I have done a very good job of. Well, in the past, not so much now because we have a body of work. But back in the day, we got good opportunities because we demonstrated our value. And that meant doing things for free. It meant doing things at a rate that was not great. You mentioned that first video you did for Vsauce. It wasn't $10,000. It wasn't much of anything. It was really an honorarium, kind of like thanks for doing this. I appreciate your work payment. People say no because of the money constantly, and they don't realize that they're passing up on an opportunity to demonstrate their value when once they've done that, they can command that price and that value and also start actually getting it coming in. Make the contract happen, make the arrangement happen, make the job happen. Kevin, I did this with you where the job that I do with you and Vsauce did not exist. And we pretty much worked it into existence, didn't we?
Yeah, over the course of a year or two, more than a year.
More like 3.
Yeah,
because I remember talking to you about scripts when I was in Israel, and that was 2013.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like 3 solid years of 2 or 3 solid years of just like that, really demonstrating why this is a thing and why I should do it. And then at a point, it made sense to start that. None of that ever happens if the beginning of the conversation is, I'm worth $97 an hour, Kevin Lieber.
All right.
Oh, I'm not going to give you any work unless you pay me what I'm worth. No, I have a great life now, in large part due to not taking that attitude. I did so many things for free back in the day, and I got tremendous experience. It put me in a position to command what I'm worth. So there are definitely times where it's not worth doing something, whether it's for free or for too little money or whatever. There are a lot of good reasons to say no. And you do have to say no sometimes, a lot of the time. But you need to think about whether you're saying no because you don't want it to be hard on you, which was Kevin's story, or are you saying no and missing out on a chance to demonstrate your value? If it's one of those situations and you're missing that chance to demonstrate value, then you think again about it and think, what happened? What's my ideal path here? Do I do this thing for pennies or free or whatever it is? Then what's the next step? And what's the next step? And then what's the end game? If that's compelling, if that seems worth it, then it's not a no anymore. It's a yes. And you can always stop at any point in that process. Maybe you were wrong. Maybe it was a dead end that you didn't see. Well, so what? You gave it a go. You had a little bit of experience and stuff in your portfolio. On to the next one. That's it. But there are so many reasons that seem on the surface to make no the right answer. Man, no is how you blow it. Saying no in the circumstances that we've just outlined is how you absolutely blow it.
Yeah, one other thing I would say about this topic before we wrap up is that you have to also trust that you don't know the good thing it could lead to. Like you can't map all this stuff out. You can't be like, okay, if I say yes to this particular thing, then 7 years from now, this person that I'll meet will get a job at this place. And when they're looking for, to scale up and they need somebody, they'll call me and it'll be a perfect But that's how life works. I mean, that's how so many things work, is like, it is this ridiculous butterfly effect that is never going to be possible to map out or plan or write in your day journal about what it's going to lead to in 9 years. That's not happening. So accept that. So simultaneously accept that and the fact that anything could happen, and it's worth taking, like allowing for the opportunity for anything to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. When I look at the recap here, when I look at the way all 6 of these points play together, they really do mix nicely. They're like components of a bubbling stew, very savory. But they all independently, each one, it matters, and there are specific ways that you can think about it in your life. Like every one of these 6 things, you can relate to something in your life. It would be impossible for somebody not to have all of these things go on for them. But they're all really intertwined. Not saying no, saying no is actually related to that isolating yourself point, where when you pop the Totinos out of the microwave and load up the Vidya machine, you're saying no to something a lot more productive. You're saying yes to something that ultimately, it's going to be awesome. It's not going to advance your life very much, but you're softly saying no to all of the alternatives. The opportunity cost of this is very high. So many points throughout the day, you encounter each of these 6 things in a way that relates to one of the others. When you say no to yourself less, well, then you're more prepared when you need to get lucky in number 3. When you do the difficult things, you go to sleep because you need the sleep rather than staying up binge watching a thing. While you're a little less of number 2, be a disaster. When things work out for you a little more often, or they're not as difficult to bear as if you had been a disaster, you're a little bit, number 1, less resentful. All of this stuff plays well with all the other pieces.
Well, and also I want to say that it's ultimately to give yourself a shot. I mean, the point of this list is not, here is exactly what you need to do to be successful. Well, that's ridiculous. There's no formula for that. What this list is suggesting is like, well, here are things to, really consider or reconsider engaging in that could be dramatically hindering where it is you want to go, or what it is you want to do, or who it is you want to be, or how it is you want to live your life. And those are all really pretty actionable things, which I think is a lot better to talk about than some sort of mythical paint by numbers, just give me, pyramid scheme. Here's how you get successful. Like, no, it's not that. It's like, here are the things to set yourself up optimally. And that's really all you can hope to do. But that can be enough. I mean, if you're not going to start there, then, well, I guess that's the whole point of this episode is, well, then you're not going to make it. Whatever it is you want to do, there are steps that you can take to better allow that to happen. And there are things that you can do to almost guarantee that it won't.
I like it. And the episode chat has been flying with all of this as people, different things have resonated in different ways. And I hope that we get comments about some of these points too. And if there's anything else that you think is it will guarantee failure, that would be good. I can see coming up with another list of 6 things that is just going to sink you. But all 6 of these things you can do something about. You have total control over most of them. Isolating yourself really is the hardest one because that does by default depend on somebody else. You can't just like bust down somebody's door and command their friendship. Like, no. There's another person at play here. But taking care of yourself is something that is largely in your control. You get to decide generally what you say yes and no to. You can decide to, pursue a project regardless of whether it's so original that it will be up for a Nobel. Most of these things are totally within your control.
Yeah. All right, that's it for this week. We have a solid run of guests booked. The next month is booked.
Yes, we do.
So we will be back next week and for the following several weeks at a regularly scheduled time for our patrons. I know there is a little bit of discussion about how we recorded this one early today, but we recorded this early because, again, our friend Alternate History Hub had life happen today. It happens to all of us. It is what it is. And we'll get him back booked for the show sometime early this year. But we will see you back next week and the week after that and the week after that with some great guests lined up. 2023 is happening. We are hitting
Check the calendar
our stride.
in the Discord.
Yeah. Join the Discord if you're not in the Discord to make sure that you're up to every event. There is an event tab at the top of the Discord. So if you're ever wondering who our upcoming guests are and when, follow us on Twitter and also join the Discord. If you want to support the show, go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown and we would be happy to have you. But we will see you next week with a pretty mega guest that I'm very excited to speak with. But until then, see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week, and the recent support has been amazing. Sid Poke, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezer Good, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. Thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Farrakhan, Jen Mefasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Monahim, Natsu, Penny Peddler, Risebread, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Videoger. And a tremendous shout out to our elite baby gang commanders: Atrocious Scuff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot, Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight, Vinthos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, Jelxies, and of course, Trevstead. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer-editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord kitten wrangler Conrad, and producer emeritus Dan Yoshua. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme. Thanks to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it. And a special thanks to Main Gear for powering all of our PC endeavors. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.